And hey, everyone, I think we are live. Of course, there's always a danger when I'm the one setting this up.
We are live. Wait a
What's
minute.
going on, JT?
Whose website are we on?
What are we on?
What the heck? Oh, I had the window open to your channel, so it
Oh yeah, no, we don't
feels
want
like a
to.
delay.
You're gonna you're gonna hear yourself in stereo if you do that. Hello, everyone. Happy Sunday to everyone. We've been a little delinquent. Lots of non-fishing stuff, unfortunately, going on. Driving us a little crazy, but it's all good. Unfortunately, I think the big discussion, JT, it's got to be one word. Can you guess what I'm thinking?
Wind.
Wind is correct. And we didn't plan this right now, but we were talking about. JT was looking up the forecast, and JT, I think you said 30 plus miles an hour in the forecast through the first day that looks perhaps fishable is October 1st.
No, that even looks. I can put it to you this way: if it looks like that on October 1st, I'm not going.
Yeah, this is almost, I dare I say, unprecedented. This is what we experienced in Florida over the winter, where literally I got out with Sweeney on January 1st. We had an epic day, 80 miles offshore on a friend's boat. And then we didn't sniff another fishable day for like 2 months, it felt. I mean,
Yeah.
it was brutal. Every day was howling.
Yep.
And I see Dave just said brutal. Yes,
Mhm.
David, brutal is not the word. So I have not really been fishing. I got out a couple of times before all this wind. Um, the fishing has been okay, but I have no idea. Typically I have noticed that all the fluke I'm filleting, JT, they're loaded with throw already. Um, and yeah, that to me is always the sign that they're ready to start migrating offshore.
Yeah.
All this wind, all this wave action, what it's going to do to the bait, what it's going to do to the fish's instincts. I I'm not confident we're going to see another fluke this year
No,
because
I just pulled it up on. Let me see if I can put this up on my desktop here. How do I do this? Let's see. Here we go. I'm going to share. Does this work? Let's try it. Can you share that, John? See down at the bottom?
yeah.
Here we go. This is the did that pop up?
Well, it
Hold on. You know what? I have to close this one. Hold on. We can look at it together, which I think would be kind of cool. There we go. Show that one. So this is the. I know you like Windfinder. I like Windfinder too. Windfinder, windy.app, and the regular wind, or windy.app, Windfinder, and the regular Windy app. And I mean, this is what it looks like. That's Monday at 5 a.m., Tuesday at 5 a.m. Now, here's something interesting. Here's something interesting. This does not show the same thing the app on my phone shows. That's strange. Huh.
Yeah, it'd be nice if the phone app was wrong because uh,
Oh, you know
I
why?
have some charters coming up. I canceled Saturday. Obviously, there was no way we were getting out. I canceled tomorrow. I have one Friday. I have one Saturday, and I'm not. I'm not. I'm not expecting to get out, but
Yeah.
come wood, that can change. Obviously,
So this is showing 11 miles an hour on Thursday. I'm curious to see. Do you have your app? Can you pull your app up?
you want me to check Windfinder?
Check Windfinder. Let's. I mean, this is showing right here 10 miles an hour for
I'm
Thursday.
looking at Montauk Point Lighthouse right now. Thursday is showing on Windfinder 19 miles. dead east, mind you, at 5 a.m., 19 to 20, 8 a.m., 21 to 23, 11 a.m., 21 to 24, 2 p.m., 22 to 32, shifting out of the south. And Friday actually looks fishable.
See, look at the screen here. This is Friday the 27th, and it's showing 27 pretty much out of the north.
Yeah, it's coming out of the north on Friday on Windfinder too, but very mild winds compared to what we're seeing right now. Under 15 all day.
And
Friday might be the only day fishable. Actually, Friday is dead east, which north. Pardon me, north.
Yeah, northeast almost.
Yeah, and then it's switching to south at 2, and then Saturday it goes up crazy again, and then late Tuesday it shows it finally subsiding. Early in the morning it's 18 to 26. I can't look at this. I'm going to get sick.
Yeah, this is pretty awful.
Yeah.
Let me close this. How do I get rid of this thing? Stop sharing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So David might have the the smartest text to date on all these fish talks. Pulled my boat to do maintenance for blackfish season. Wise move, considering I don't think you're going to have much of an opportunity, Dave, in the next week to get out. So
it's kind of sad. Like fluke season, we might miss it, like the end of it.
Yeah. No. Well, in New York, it's going through. In New York, it's going through October something.
13th, is it?
It could be. I hadn't planned on fishing past like the beginning of October, but obviously, if they're still there, I'll still target them. Fluke season closes this Wednesday in Jersey. We had maybe 3 weeks of consistently good ocean fluking all season. Philly Man Pete. Yeah, we've same in New York. From an ocean perspective, look, we've had trips where we've caught fish, but it wasn't that consistently good. It was trips where you were grinding. We got a hello from Crabbing and Fishing. Yeah, and Dave is making a couple good points about this weather. Just not fishable, especially where we fish. Yeah, agree.
Well, let's talk about blackfish season, shall we?
Yeah, why
one
not?
of your favorites. So, what do you think? I know, like the summer season in Connecticut, a lot of people did really well. There were some 12-pounders caught. There was a 14-pounder caught in like 6 feet of water. So,
yeah, we did a couple of porgy trips. I took my brother-in-law and my cousin, and we were catching blackfish on clams while porgy fishing. I think it's been the most consistent fishing we've had in the last 5 years. Better than fluke, better than striper. My big concern is I fish a handful of areas, and given that I have a lot of blackfish trips booked this year, I don't want to fish out an area, and I want to have backup areas in case A, the spot's not producing, and B, the spot is not fishable because of wind. We have plenty of islands near us: Plum Island, Fisher's Island, Shelter Island, Peconic Bay. I am dying for that Long Island Sound season to open, where I can't legally keep fish where my boat is. So my charters don't start in earnest till the 15th. I plan on hitting some spots I found on Navionics. I'm pulling my JT card out and seeing if I can find some spots that will be weather spots, meaning they're not going to be my prime spots. But if we have a north wind, I can duck here where I have blockage from the north and it looks like there's good structure and it's jiggable. I'm talking about, like, for example, the south side of of Plum Island. I was watching, I don't know if you guys saw Skinner's video today where he was going around the ruins, and there's no anchorage there, but I have a trolling motor. There were so many blackfish in that video he did. I'm curious, if we can hide on the, between that spot and Gardner's Island, whether perhaps there could be blackfish there too. I don't know, but
Sure there are.
that's what I'm going to spend my time doing, prospecting.
Sure.
Anything for you, JT?
I have my milk run of spots that I fish every year, and pretty much have like 3 or 4 spots for each different wind direction. So,
Well, you guys are a little lucky too, JT and David and some of the other guys from Connecticut. Your north wind is like our south wind on the Long Island Sound.
mhm.
So when you have the prevailing wind in the fall into the winter for us is north.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have that wind, you can still kind of come out. JT, you and I talked about a spot last year where I fluke fished once or twice, based on your recommendations, where there's a lot of structure and a lot of blackfish. And if you're coming out of the mouths of some of those rivers, the Thames or the Connecticut River, I imagine if it's a north wind, it could be blowing 20. You're still going to be relatively protected coming straight out of the north.
We've had plenty of days where it's a 20-mile-an-hour wind out of the north, and it looks like a pond where we're fishing.
Yeah, where I would possibly die trying to get over there, cutting across the Gun and most of the Sound.
Right. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to it. It's fun. It's part of football season to me too. It's kind of like a holiday.
Yeah. So David asked a good question. How is spot lock with current? It's okay, but you will, with wind and current, your battery will deplete faster. And obviously, at a certain point, if the current, like you couldn't do this in Plum Gut, you couldn't do this in the race. It's not doable during peak tides. There's no way the motor can hold a 5 to 10,000 pound boat if there's a 5-knot prevailing current. But the spots we fish typically don't have a lot of natural current, and the bigger hindrance is the wind. Speaking of spots, John, are you able to share what you're looking for on Navionics? Yeah. So look, this is JT. I know the question was directed at me, but this is your baby over here. You go ahead and answer it.
It really comes down to, at least for me, it's finding big rocks. And usually, most of the time, because I like to use, I'm a jig guy. I don't like using anything more than probably 3/4 of an ounce with a spinning rod for them. So most of the stuff that I'm looking for is relatively shallow, 40 feet or less. And a lot of times I'm looking for just changes in the bottom where it could be a point. And most of the time on Navionics, you'll be able to see, if you zoom in close enough and the area is shallow enough, you'll actually be able to see individual rocks.
And this is using relief shading,
using
right?
relief shading, correct. If you're not going to use relief shading, which I don't see why you wouldn't use it, then you're going to start to look for the contour lines that are really, really tight together, that kind of jet out into deeper water. And most of the time when you find something like that, it's going to be a hard bottom, and a smaller protrusion on the map is going to be a big rock most of the time, or a cluster of big rocks. And at least up and down the Connecticut shoreline, you find a couple big boulders, there's going to be blackfish around every single one.
100%. 100%. Agree with that. David asked another question. Do you still use your anchor? The answer is no. I owned the CV for 5 full years. The anchor was not deployed one time. Never. Not once. The entire time I owned the CV. And I don't plan on deploying the anchor on my cat unless, knock on wood, we're in a situation where the trolling motor is not working, whether the battery got depleted or it's just, sometimes you have to, if you're fishing areas that are really strong current. Again, I don't fish those areas. Typically, those areas aren't conducive to light tackle jigging, at least if you want to fish the whole tide. Obviously, any spot during slack, you can light tackle jig, but I don't look for those spots where I can only fish it, for an hour or less. I look for spots that, I can get the whole tide in without worrying about the current.
I like his next question.
Yeah, so do I. Is there any difference at all in jigs? Unlike bucktails, they all seem the same. I'll go first on this one. I think there is hook size, hook length, quality of hook. Um, those are two things that stand out to me. And the one thing I've noticed that I personally don't like, but many people will say you're crazy and disagree. I don't like the smaller shank hooks. And I have some examples actually. I didn't know we were going to get asked that. I can grab it. There's nothing wrong with that. People catch a lot of fish on them, but I just struggle to keep the hook exposed when it's a really, really small hook and you're putting half a green crab on. I just have more confidence in the slightly longer shank hook, like the jigs that Stan used to make, that
White chin wrecker.
the Skinner name on. I liked those jigs, those slightly longer shank jigs.
Mm-hmm. I was a big fan, and I have literally thousands of them, of the white chin wreckers, and I liked the shape of the jig head because it was flat, but I really liked the hook he used in that because it was a thinner gauge wire. You can catch a blackfish on any of those jigs, but in my mind, the thinner the gauge wire on the hook, the better, because it's more like a needle. Because most of the time you're waiting for that, you're waiting for the blackfish to eat it, and that thinner gauge wire hook is, at least I feel it goes into the fish's mouth better. But and not to be in a bragging way, but pretty much anybody that I fish with, if I'll outfish them every single trip, like all the guys that come out on the Sea Fever that you see on Next Drift, they'll all be using 2-ounce jigs or a big rig, and I'm throwing a half ounce or a 3/4 ounce, and I'll hook pretty much everything that bites.
Yeah, so Crabbin' and Fishing just asked, does anybody make a bottom sweeper with 2 hooks? I'm sure somebody does. I'm not aware.
Yeah, you could probably make them yourself. What is it? Does anyone make a bottom sweeper? Oh, yeah. I'll let you answer that one. What about rigs?
Huh. Really the wrong guy to ask about rigs.
We should get Todd Mann on here. I don't think
Todd, we need Todd for that.
Once.
Or Mike Sadowski. Shane, I literally use rigs once or twice a year, and I'm always with Todd when I'm doing it. I'm going to have a video coming out about tuna fishing and what a unique experience it is, and it's good to do it once in a blue moon. It's something different. I did it a couple weeks ago. I'm telling that story because this is very similar to rig fishing. Not only do I hardly ever do it now, but when I do it, I'm insanely terrible at it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm your crew with jigs when we're rig fishing. I'm Joey, because I just can't. My mind is focused on the right hit and waiting for, and it screws you up.
I can't do it. I can't do it. Like Joe can sit there and he'll know when he's getting a bite, and he'll have a 10 or 12 ounce weight on.
I can't do that anymore.
And I'm like, are you like? And with these big ass hooks, they look like striper hooks, and they got a crab, whole crab, and it's.
I don't know how they do it.
I'm like, what?
I can't do it. I'm woefully lost when I do that type of fishing.
Mm-hmm. No, not for me. But I like the feel of it on a spinning rod with a light jig head and a 30-pound leader.
Yeah, there's my buddy Brendan from Florida chiming into the live stream, Fisher Family Adventures. Could you just add an assist hook like you do to a slow pitch jig? I'm presuming you could, Brendan. That's a good. And by the way, Brendan is one of the guys I'm looking forward to fishing with in a couple months when I'm back down that way. We've had a couple of epic grouper trips down that way. And Jason Rottenkamp said tuna fishing can be really intense. Jason, I think I'm going to publish this tomorrow. I have it done, but I'm tweaking it a little bit. Intense is not the word for this video I'm going to put out. It's like that old wild world of sports. Those of you that are old enough to remember, most of the folks on this live stream won't be old enough to remember, but the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat, that's What purpose does a ball jig serve compared to a bucktail? I presume that's a fluke question. I think the ball jigs, much like guys who use cannonball sinkers, like Skinner's a big proponent of cannonball sinkers rather than bank sinkers. He feels like they're less likely to get hung up. I know ball jigs seem to be more of a Jersey thing than a Long Island thing, my observation. And I could it be because the Jersey guys fishing the railroad trucks and the tanks and all that crazy structure, that perhaps that's less likely to get hung up, even though I know you guys go through a million jigs when you're out there in the deep fluke fishing. JT, I don't know if you have a theory. I've never really thought about this question.
The only time that I think it's a confidence thing, number one, for people like Nino. That's all those guys use. They don't use any bucktails.
Right.
And I think the other purpose that I see for it predominantly is the fact that it's a little more streamlined and it doesn't have as much drag. So if the current's moving pretty good, you can still keep contact with the bottom because you don't have the bucktail on it.
Yeah. And David, who's getting MVP of this live stream, my buddy uses snafu. It just turns into entangled mess for me. I agree. The trick with that, Dave, is to go heavy on the line. There's a lot of shops that make them. I always struggle to tie these. I've just decided let the pros at Jigging World and at Tackle World and Tackle Direct. They both sell them. Just go on their website. You can, get them in 40, 60, 80-pound line. The thicker the line, the better it's going to be. And it's not a crazy price either, JT, if that's what you're looking up. It's like $4 a rig. When you factor in the time and effort, the line, the hooks, you're probably not that much cheaper making it yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have you guys ever used the conventional setup with the Blackfish jig? I have not. I've seen clients do it. I just like the ability to get the line down faster with that light jig with a small spinner. Just my personal taste. I'm certain a very quality small conventional setup will work. The problem is going to be some of those lighter, like if you look at an Accurus reel, you don't want to use that. That does not have the backbone for Blackfish. You can get a quality small Penn Daiwa. Even the Tsunami Vic series of reels are great, $140, and they have a lot of stopping power, and they generally last. At least the ones I've bought have. I think when you start getting into those smaller bait casters, you're probably looking at way more money for a really high end smaller one. So we got Philly Man Pete in North and Central Jersey. Many of the ocean fluke spots are Snag City. Cheaper to lose a half dozen ball jigs than a half pros. I didn't think of the economics.
That's a good point.
That's a good point.
Of course, you're putting gulp on there, and then you add an extra $2.
It's crazy to think that every time you lose a rig, you're losing $4 in gulp if you have the standard, teaser jig setup.
Yeah. It's sickening.
Yeah. What is your rod, reel, spinner setup? Mine is, I have a couple. My own rod, the VRC Jigging Jerks noodle rod. It's specifically designed for tog fishing. I pair that with one of three reels. I have the Tsunami Vic 2500, a Penn Slammer 4 2500, and a Penn Battle 4, the CNC machine Penn battles that came out a couple years ago, 2500. So those are my setups. I also have backup rods are St. Croix trophy rods. All those rods are 6 feet. And they're moderate. They're not slow pitch, but they're not obviously fast pitch. They have a very, very sensitive tip, but it's not a true slow pitch rod. What about you, JT?
I have my two favorite rods are the 7-foot medium heavy carbon shield spinning rod. It's a little less expensive rod, and then my other one I have is a G Loomis GLX 7.2 medium heavy that I really like. It's really sensitive. It's actually more of a freshwater rod. It has a lot of tip, but a ton of backbone, and I
Yeah.
can feel everything with it. It's just a super nice rod, and either I'll have a Stratic, like a 3000 size. Is probably the biggest reel size that I'll go, only because I really spend my time in, like I said, 40 feet of water or less, so I don't need a super big setup.
Yeah.
But you know, I think as far as if you're going to spend money, at least in my opinion, a reel is um, probably what you want to spend the bulk of your money on,
Right.
and that's because of the drag and the
Agreed.
function. Yeah,
Agreed. That's why I think with the conventional stuff, some of those smaller bait casters, like I said, just using the Accuracy as the example, not to pick on them. Great rod for fluke. Fluke don't fight as hard as blackfish. I can't imagine that reel will last a season if you're using it for blackfish.
yeah, and also too, you're not going to have nearly as much feel with a bait caster as you will a spinning rod. If you're using a small jig, 3/4, half ounce, which is pretty much all I use. You're never going to feel as many bites with a bait casting setup as you would a spinning setup.
And
And
we're
same thing,
jumping.
10-pound braid, 30-pound test fluorocarbon leader, about 4 feet long, and tied directly to the jig head, and that's how.
Yeah. And I do the same, 10 and 30, although when I am fishing, if I'm in a tournament or I'm keyed in on big fish for some reason and I'm using the jig, I will up that to 30-pound leader, just for a little more abrasion resistance. Again, the leader concern is not with the fish, because your drag will take care of that. You can pick up a 50-pound fish on 10-pound braid. The issue will always be, what if the fish runs you into the rocks and gets above your fluoro, then you run the risk of the braid breaking easier if it's 10-pound as opposed to 20, 30, 40.
And don't use any clips. Tie directly to your
Agree.
jig head.
Agree. That's just more shit that can tangle.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna jump back to Philly man Pete. I don't want to skip him, even though his Phillies are playing my Mets today. Their Mets are probably getting blown out because Wheeler's pitching. But do you think Gulp will ever be dethroned as the go-to fluke bait? I personally hope there will be a good competitor someday. I do not see one right now. You guys, I agree with everything you said. I hope so, because that costs them pennies on the dollar to make. They sell it for an outrageous amount. Um, I hope you're right. I have no idea.
Do you know what the main ingredient of gulp is?
So I did a video about this years ago where my buddy Michael March, we met him on a Hampton Lady trip, and he got his friend on the phone who apparently knew about the patent that Berkeley had, and they were adamant it was some kind of Japanese vegetable root, or
Himalayan yams is that?
yeah, yam, yeah, the yam. That's what he said.
Himalayan yam. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay, that matches what he said.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't think there will ever be a replacement for Gulp. They have way too much money. Berkeley's a huge company now. Well, it's owned by, what is it, owned by Pure Fishing still, or is it separate? I can't keep up anymore. But
I don't think it's owned by Pure Fishing, because I'm on their guide program, and if it was owned by it, I would get a
all
significant
right, so it's
discount.
Berkeley.
My
I
friends like
mean,
to say
yeah,
it's salt strong.
they're for years, decades, they've had test tanks, and then they have an absolutely enormous laboratory with chemists that work there that are constantly working on the formula. That's why it's so secret. That's why you can't buy the juice itself. They don't want anybody. I mean, I guess if you were a chemist and could break it down, you could tell what it was.
Right. And let's grab another comment. Hey guys, does the gut and race get stripers in the fall run like in the spring? Absolutely it does. The one big difference, James, is that you also get the whatchamacallit. You get the bluefish that you don't typically see in the spring until much later. So you're going to have to deal with the bluefish in the fall where they're less prevalent in the spring. But we got them last year. If you remember that Skinner video where he fell in the water with his brother at the wheel, that was in the fall, and they were catching stripers that day. And it should be any time. Skinner's actually been trying to catch them, but he hasn't yet. But it will happen. And this was unfortunate. Thank you, Mike. I think 1-0 Philly. And let's just go back, Alex. If you're looking for the specific braid I use, like the brand, I only use Suffix 832. It's just something I've had a lot of success with. It works for me. I've tried Power Pro and it would constantly break. I'm not a fan of it. I know a lot of people are. I know Skinner loves like the J braid and some of the other lines. I'm sure those are fine. I'm a creature of habit. I've gotten into using Suffix 832, and that's just what I order thousands of yards of that in 10 pound because I use it for fluke. I use it for blackfish, and believe it or not, I've been using it for stripers on some of my setups because you can get down at the gut in the race with the 6-ounce bucktail so much easier with 10-pound braid. And as long as you have, 6-7 feet of 50-60 pound fluoro, the line's not going to break. It's the braid's not going to break. It's going to be, the fluoro that's dragging on the bottom that could snap. Now, look, if you get hung up, yeah, it'll break then, obviously, but it won't break just because you have a big fish on.
Yeah, I find Power Pro to be very noisy. It's a very noisy braid when it goes through your guides. I like J braid. Does Berkeley still make Fireline?
I don't know. That's a good question.
Because I might try that this year. I was thinking about that, and then this just maybe reminded me of that. I might try Fireline this year for blackfish.
Berkeley Fireline braid. I mean, it's on Amazon.
Yeah, it's
it's called. Well, they call it X. No,
is that what Berkeley X9 is?
Yeah. So because they don't call it. Fireline is now. It looks like it's. Maybe they still have it. Thermally fused tough Superline. I don't know if it's braid though. Berkeley fishing line.
It's called it's microdyneema is what the technical term of it, and it's woven.
Yeah, this new and improved braided fishing line. So they are still calling it braid.
Yeah, because it's smooth. It's not. It's not braided like a regular braid is.
Right. It's pretty expensive, to be honest.
Is it? I haven't checked it out in years, but
yeah, I'm looking at it now.
So I'll have to see. That might be actually a really good option.
East Coast Fishing has a good question. What is your favorite party boat? I fished on the Rosie this year out of Mauritius. That I had an amazing experience. Having said that, I've had great experiences fishing on the Montauk Star, the Miss Montauk. I don't think you could go wrong. At least the boats I've been on, any of those boats, they'll do their best to put you on fish. They'll try hard. That's all you can ask. And I've caught fish on all three of those boats, and I absolutely no complaints. I'll say I've been on a bunch of party boats down in Florida. And I think the party boat experience up here in the Northeast, and let me clarify that by saying the East Coast of Florida, so not the West Coast, is so much better here than down there. Yeah, Anthony, I agree. I'm more focused on the sensitivity of the tip and the balance of the rod. I don't get caught up in slow pitch, fast pitch, all that nonsense. Me personally, you're not really jigging for them like you would be jigging for sea bass or tilefish or any other number of fish that you catch on jigs. We say we're jig fishing, but It's really rig fishing with with a little jig on it instead of a hook with a sinker.
Yeah, I like having a rod that has a sensitive tip, but also has the backbone. So you feel the bite and then the backbone to be able to move them. Because a lot of times, if you're fishing around rocks, I want to get them up and
Yeah.
moving. So that's definitely something to think about. I think if you use too limber of a rod, you're just kind of laying into them, then you're not going to move them as quickly.
So what about Beyond Braid? I've never used that, Shane. No experience. What water temp do you start to venture off shallow blackfish structure? Shallow right at the beginning of the year, James. The temp starts cooling off faster in shallow water, just like it starts heating up quicker in the spring than in the deeper water. It's going to start getting cooler. You can catch them right now. I promise you, if you hit any of our blackfish spots, you would catch blackfish right now. The issue is going to be until that water starts significantly cooling off. You're going to have porgies and sea bass and God knows what other, interference fish mixed in. So in a perfect world, the temperatures are in the mid 50s. But that's not going to happen when the season opens. The water temps will likely be in I'm going to guess the mid to low 60s. We're still going to catch them, but you're going to deal with more sea bass, porgies, and sea robins. JT, I don't know if you have an opinion on this.
I think once the water temp hits like 45 is when you really start to see the majority of the fish in like that 100-foot range. At least that's what I think. They start to move out deeper as the winter gets closer. But we still catch a lot of really big blackfish, like mid-November in 20 feet of water.
Yeah. Is there any truth to a white crab bite shutting down a green pipe? The only time I've seen that, Jason, is not necessarily with white crabs and green crabs. It's with hermit crabs. I am of the strong opinion that if there's a porgy or a sea bass in a 10-mile radius and you drop a hermit crab, they will find it, and then it'll screw up the fishing for everyone on the boat. They'll inundate the boat once they smell a hermit crab. I have seen white crabs far out producing green crabs for bigger fish, typically in deeper water, typically in colder water. I don't know if that's just because if there's a biological reason for that. I don't know. I would think the green crab would be the more delectable crab. It's got more juice in it, more guts. It just looks like a more satisfying meal. But yes, if you talk to the Sharpies, the Mike Sadowskis, the Todds of the world who catch a lot of big blackfish, they will tell you white crabs are a must. Are you guys fishing the same depths through? So, David, I do, but I'm an outlier because I don't fish anything heavier than an ounce. And like JT, most of my fishing is half ounce and 3/4 ounce.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm too am not going above 40 feet the whole season. Unless I'm fishing with, like this year, I'll be fishing the Billies by the Bay tournament, October 19th in Greenport, New York. I'm fishing that with Todd on his boat. So that day I will be, gritting my teeth and
Sailing the 7 seas.
Yeah. And watching the other guys bring up fish while I'm
Yep.
the glorified net boy.
We'll be fishing 20 feet from the jetty.
Yeah.
I like the next question.
Yeah.
And I always cut the crab in half, and I always cut the legs off, and I always use green crabs, and that is all I use. And I thread the hook through the sockets of the legs and kind of bury the point in there just till it comes out, and that's it. And I don't like the huge ones. I like the smaller crabs. They're the medium-sized ones.
I'm almost like you, but I try different things. Like when we first get there, I always take the shells off, always, just to get that scent going. And then I'll usually cut the legs too. If there's a little bit of current, I'll always cut the legs just to give it a little less drag. But I do the same thing. It's half a crab for me on a small jig. Yeah, unless we're using Asians or something. But green crabs normally, if there's white crabs, I buy them and I bring them. And I witnessed it where they've outfished greens. But and I have a video from a couple of years ago where I go over crab selection. And JT, I'm like you. If you put a gun to my head and said you're only allowed to use one crab for the rest of your life, I would pick green crabs. I think they're the most versatile. They stay on the best. They have the best scent. And at the end of the day, we know crabs eat. Blackfish eat them. Hard stop.
Yep. And the orange ones, I always pick the orange ones out first. So on the bottoms, there's some that are orange.
Yeah, they're hardier. The ones that are green are not as hardy. They're more like a white crab in terms of how they stay on the hook. But the orange ones also have that scent, which again, you just drop it near the top of the water and look what happens to the water. I can't imagine that when that crab hits the bottom of the water, that it's not setting off dinner bells for all the talk in that area you're fishing.
There's something about it, and there's certain parts of the tide too, like right at slack, like that. That's actually very similar to fluke fishing, but there's that certain time where all of a sudden bigger fish show up.
Fish, yep.
And if you don't have an orange half a green crab, you're not going to catch them.
All right.
Great questions.
We've run out of questions.
Yeah, this was great. I think we got everybody. Thank you for all of your questions, everyone.
Yeah, and we'll do this again. You want to do it again next Thursday, JT, not this coming one, because nobody's fishing this week.
Yeah.
Thursday will be right on the eve of blackfish season. Maybe we can find a good guest. Maybe we'll bring Todd on to talk about blackfish.
That'd be cool.
I think he'd love to do it.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
All right, guys. Well, thank you as always for joining, and amazing questions as always. Thank you, and we'll catch up in about 10 days.
Take care, everybody. See you, John.